The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a massive structure floating in the darkness of space. It was built on an artificial world, far from any star system, a neutral ground where all species could meet and talk. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. Lights of 1,000 colors glowed from every direction. Representatives from over 300 alien civilizations sat in their seats, arranged in circles that went up and up like a giant bowl. Walked toward the central platform. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He was a tall man with short black hair and tired eyes. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Behind him walked a young woman with sharp eyes and a small device in her hands. She was his assistant, his translator, and his only friend in this strange place. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago. In the eyes of species that had traveled the stars for millions of years, humans were like newborn babies. They were small. They were weak. They were not important. But had not come here to ask for respect. He had come to give a warning. He reached the central platform and stood under the bright light that shone down from above. 100,000 eyes watched him. Some were like human eyes. Others were clusters of smaller eyes. Some glowed in the dark. Some had no eyes at all but sensed him in other ways. Cleared his throat. His voice, when he spoke, was carried to every corner of the hall by invisible technology. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began. "I am Ambassador of Earth. I stand before you today not to ask for trade agreements, not to discuss borders or resources. I am here to warn you of a danger that will destroy us all if we do not act now." A low sound moved through the crowd. It was something like laughter, but not quite. It was the sound of 300 species finding a small creature amusing. Ignored it, he turned to and nodded. Pressed a button on her device. Above the platform, a massive image appeared. It showed a section of space at the very edge of the galaxy. Stars glowed like tiny dots, but between those stars there was something else. A darkness that moved, a shadow that ate the light. 3 years ago, continued, our deep space sensors detected unusual movement in Sector 7G. We sent probes to investigate. Those probes recorded images before they were destroyed. The image changed. Now it showed something closer. Shapes moved in the darkness. They were hard to see, but they were there. Thousands of them, millions of them. Each one was larger than a city. They moved together like a swarm of insects flowing through space with terrible purpose. "We call them the Void Swarm," said. "Our scientists believe they are a species, part living creature, part machine. They consume everything in their path, planets, moons, even stars. They drain all energy and leave nothing behind but cold, empty space." The crowd stirred. Some delegates leaned forward to look at the images more closely. Others waved their appendages in dismissal. A voice spoke from high above. It was the council leader. He was from a species called the ancient beings of pure energy who had guided the galaxy for eons. His form shifted and glowed like blue fire. "Ambassador," said, his voice smooth and calm, "these images are interesting, but surely you do not expect us to take this seriously." Felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. He forced himself to stay calm. "Council leader, with respect, our calculations show the Void Swarm will reach the outer colonies in less than 4 years, if we do not prepare." "Prepare?" Another voice interrupted him. This one belonged to a large creature with scales and 4 arms. He was the representative of the Empire, a military power that controlled hundreds of star systems. "Young human, they have protected this galaxy for 2 million years. We have faced countless threats. Do you truly believe your infant species has discovered something that we missed?" Laughter spread through the hall, real laughter this time. Moved closer to, she whispered, "Ambassador, they are not listening." "I know," whispered back, but he did not step down. He raised his voice again. "I have brought detailed reports, scientific data, projected paths of the swarm's movement, if you would only look at the evidence." Evidence from human sensors, interrupted gently. Ambassador, your species has only been traveling between stars for a short time. Your technology is limited. It is possible that your instruments have made an error. There is no error, said firmly. The void swarm is real. It is coming. And if we do not work together to stop it, everything we have built will be destroyed. Silence fell over the hall. For a moment, thought they might actually listen. He thought they might finally see the truth. Then spoke again. The Council thanks Earth for its concern, he said, but we see no reason for alarm. The darkness you speak of is likely nothing more than a natural phenomenon, a cluster of dead stars, perhaps, or a cloud of dark matter. Such things are common in the outer regions. It is not a natural phenomenon, said. His voice was rising now, frustration breaking through his careful control. It is alive, it is moving, it is hunting. The representative snorted. Hunting? Please, human, do not tell stories to frighten us like children. More laughter. Looked around the great hall. He saw amusement on faces that should have shown fear. He saw dismissal in eyes that should have held understanding. These ancient beings, so proud of their age and power, could not believe that a young species like humanity might see something they had missed. He turned too. Her face was pale, but her eyes were hard with anger. Show them the final recording, said. Hesitated, then pressed another button. The image above the platform changed one last time. Now it showed a planet, a beautiful world with blue oceans and green land, a colony world at the edge of explored space. The recording was dated 6 months ago. As they watched, the void swarm arrived. The darkness fell upon the planet like a living shadow. In minutes, the oceans boiled away. The green land turned black. The atmosphere was stripped away, leaving nothing but bare rock. Then even the rock began to disappear, consumed by the endless hunger of the swarm. Within an hour, the planet was gone. Only a cloud of dust remained where a world had once existed. The hall was silent. Spoke into that silence. That was Colony 7. 4 million people lived there. They sent a distress signal. It lasted 11 minutes before it stopped. We could not save them. We could not even warn them in time. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the crowd. This is what is coming, he said. Not in 100 years, not in 50. In less than 4 years, the void swarm will reach the core systems. It will consume everything. And if we do not prepare now together, there will be nothing left to save. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then's gentle voice filled the hall once more. We are sorry for the loss of your colony, Ambassador, truly. But one lost world does not prove your theory. Space is dangerous. Accidents happen. Perhaps there was a natural disaster, a core collapse, or a natural disaster that consumed an entire planet in 1 hour. His voice was sharp now. A natural disaster that left no debris, no radiation, nothing but empty space. His form flickered. The Council has made its decision. We will not act on unverified threats from a junior species. If you have further evidence, you may present it through the proper channels. This matter is closed. Stared at the glowing being. He wanted to shout. He wanted to grab them all and force them to understand, but he knew it would do no good. He turned too. She was already putting her device away, her movements stiff with contained rage. Come, said quietly, we are done here. They walked toward the exit together. The crowd watched them go, already forgetting, already moving on to other matters. But at the door, stopped. He turned back one final time and looked at the great assembly of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Remember this day, he said. His voice was calm now, cold as space itself. When the darkness comes for you, remember that we tried to warn you. Remember that you laughed. Then he walked out into the corridor, and the great doors closed behind him. In the hall, the Galactic Council moved on to discuss trade routes and border disputes. They did not know that they had just sealed their fate. The shuttle ride back to Earth Station was quiet. Sat by the window, watching the stars pass by in silence. Sat across from him, her tablet in her lap, but she was not looking at it. She was looking at him. "They will regret this," she said finally. Did not answer at first. His mind was still in that great hall, facing all those ancient eyes that had looked at him like he was a child telling stories about monsters under the bed. "Yes," he said at last, "they will, but by then it may be too late." The shuttle docked at Outpost 7, humanity's diplomatic station near the Council's artificial world. It was a small structure compared to the stations of older species. Simple, functional. It held only 100 people, most of them diplomats, scientists, and support staff. When stepped off the shuttle, he found a crowd waiting for him. They were all the other members of Earth's diplomatic team. Their faces were filled with hope, with expectation. That hope died when they saw his expression. "They refused," said a young man named. He was one of the junior diplomats, barely 30 years old. "They actually refused." "They did not just refuse," said bitterly. "They laughed at us." Silence spread through the group. They had all worked so hard. For months they had gathered evidence, prepared reports, practiced presentations. They had believed that when the council saw the truth, they would act. They had believed in the system. Now that belief was broken. An older woman stepped forward. Her name was, and she was the head of the scientific team attached to the diplomatic mission. Her gray hair was tied back in a tight knot, and her eyes were sharp behind her glasses. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. He told them all. He described the presentation, the evidence he had shown, the recording of Colony 7's destruction. He told them how had dismissed everything, how the other delegates had laughed, how the council had closed the matter without a second thought. When he finished, his face was hard as stone. "They are fools," she said. "All of them. Fools who have been safe for so long that they have forgotten what danger looks like." "What do we do now?" asked. His voice was small, uncertain. "If the council will not help, if no one will listen." Looked at the young man. He saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear that lived in all of them, the fear of facing something terrible alone. But had expected this. He had hoped for better, but he had expected this. "We do what humans have always done," he said. "We prepare ourselves." That night made a call to Earth. It was a secure channel, encrypted with the most advanced technology humanity possessed. On the other end was a woman named. She was the Secretary General of the United Earth Government, the most powerful leader humanity had. Her face appeared on the screen, tired but alert. She was in her office, somewhere deep beneath the mountains of what had once been called Korea. It was the middle of the night there, but she had been waiting for his call. "I saw the recording of your presentation," said. "The council's response was disappointing." "Disappointing is a gentle word for it," replied. Nodded slowly. "I suspected this might happen. The older species have always looked down on us. To them, we are children playing at being adults. They cannot imagine that we might see something they have missed." "The Void Swarm will not care about their arrogance," said. "It will consume them just as easily as it consumed Colony 7. "I know," leaned forward, her eyes meeting his through the screen. "That is why we have been preparing." His heart quickened. "The special project." "Yes, Project Iron Sky. It has been running in secret for the past 2 years, ever since we first detected the swarm. We hoped the council would join us. We hoped they would add their strength to ours. But we always knew there was a chance they would refuse." She touched a button on her desk. A new image appeared on screen. It showed a massive shipyard hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Ships were being built there. Hundreds of them. Ships unlike any humanity had ever constructed before. "These are the new warships," explained. "Designed specifically to fight the Void Swarm. Our scientists have studied every piece of data we could gather. They have found weaknesses in the swarm's structure. These ships carry weapons that can exploit those weaknesses. Stared at the image. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way. Long and sleek, bristling with weapons, their hulls painted in the deep black of space. "How many?" he asked. "By the time the swarm reaches the core systems, we will have 500 capital ships and 3,000 support vessels. It is the largest fleet humanity has ever built." "Will it be enough?" Was silent for a moment. "Honestly, we do not know. The swarm is vast, but it is all we have, and we will fight with everything we have." Felt something stir in his chest. It was not hope exactly. It was something older, something deeper. It was the feeling that had driven humanity to climb down from the trees, to cross the oceans, to reach for the stars. The refusal to accept defeat. The determination to survive no matter what. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Stay at the station," said. "Keep watching, keep gathering information, and when the time comes, you will deliver our message to the council." "What message?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The message that will remind them of their mistake." The months that followed were strange and quiet. Continued his work at Outpost 7, attending council sessions, meeting with representatives from other species. He spoke about trade and treaties and minor disputes, all the normal business of galactic politics. But he was always watching, always waiting. Watch too. She had become his closest ally, his most trusted friend. They spent long nights in his office, studying reports of the swarm's movement, tracking its path through the outer regions of the galaxy. It moved slowly, but it never stopped. Like a tide of darkness, it crept across the stars, leaving nothing behind. Other species began to notice. At first, it was just rumors. Ships that disappeared near the outer rim, colonies that went silent, explorers who ventured too far and never returned. But the council did nothing, assured everyone that these were isolated incidents, natural dangers, nothing to worry about. "They are afraid," said one night, as they watched the latest reports come in. "They do not want to believe that something could threaten them. It is easier to pretend the danger is not real." "Fear makes people blind," agreed. "Even ancient, powerful people." "What about us?" asked. "Are we afraid?" Thought about the question. He thought about Earth, so small and far away. He thought about the fleet being built in secret, the weapons being forged, the soldiers being trained. He thought about all the people who were counting on them to survive. "Yes," he said honestly, "we are afraid, but fear does not stop humans, it makes us fight harder." Smiled, it was a small smile, tired but real. "That is why I believe in us." Meanwhile, on Earth, the preparations continued. Admiral Minu, a veteran of 100 battles, was placed in command of the secret fleet. He was a serious man with a face and eyes that had seen too much death. He did not make speeches or promise easy victories. He simply worked, day after day, training his crews, testing his weapons, preparing for the battle that was coming. Under his command was Captain. She was young for a captain, only 35 years old, but she had proven herself in the border skirmishes that occasionally broke out at the edge of human space. She was brave, smart, and completely dedicated to protecting her people. "Do you think we can win?" one of her officers asked her once, as they stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the construction drones work on a new warship outside. Did not answer right away. She watched the sparks fly in the darkness of space, metal being shaped into weapons of war. "I think we have to try," she said finally. "If we do not fight, we die. If we fight, we might die anyway, but at least we will die standing." The officer nodded. That was all the answer he needed. Back at the station, received a final message from. "The swarm has changed direction," she said. "Our latest projections show it will reach the first major council colony in 8 months. After that, it will move quickly through the core systems. And Earth, if nothing stops it, 14 months. closed his eyes. 14 months. It seemed like such a short time and such a long time. The fleet will be ready in 6 months, continued. When the swarm attacks the council colonies, we will be there. But we will not save them for free. They had their chance to stand with us. Now they will see what happens when humans fight alone. Understood, said. He ended the call and sat in silence for a long time. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the darkness was coming. But humanity was ready. The first attack came on a morning that no one would ever forget. The planet was called Harmony Prime. It was one of the jewels of the civilization, a world of crystal towers and floating cities where millions of energy beings lived in peace. They had existed there for over 100,000 years. They believed they would exist there forever. They were wrong. Was in his office when the emergency alert came through. Red lights flashed across every screen. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. The station shook as ships began to launch in every direction. Burst through his door, her face white with shock. "It's happening," she said. "The swarm, it's here." They ran to the observation deck. A massive screen covered one wall, showing a live feed from Harmony Prime. What they saw made its blood run cold. The void swarm filled the sky. Millions of creatures, each one a twisted mass of metal and flesh, descended upon the planet like locusts. The crystal towers that had stood for 100,000 years crumbled in seconds. The floating cities fell from the sky, burning as they dropped. Screams echoed across the communication channels, screams that grew weaker and weaker until they stopped altogether. The attack lasted less than 3 hours. When it was over, Harmony Prime was gone, not destroyed, not ruined, gone. The planet itself had been consumed, broken apart and devoured by the endless hunger of the swarm. Where a beautiful world had once orbited its star, there was now only an empty space filled with slowly drifting dust. 30 million had lived on Harmony Prime. None survived. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had laughed its warning now stared at their screens in horror. The void swarm was real. It was here, and it was hungry. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council were called. Delegates shouted at each other, demanding action, demanding protection, demanding answers. The council leader tried to maintain order, but his voice was weak and his light flickered with fear. "We must unite," said. "We must gather our fleets and strike back." "Strike back with what?" the representative roared. His scales had lost their shine and his 4 arms trembled. "The swarm numbers in the billions. Our combined fleets are nothing compared to that." "Then we must run," another delegate said. "Evacuate the core systems. Find a new home on the other side of the galaxy." "There is nowhere to run," replied. "The swarm will follow, it will find us. Our only hope is to fight." "But how?" No one had an answer. In the chaos, no one noticed standing at the edge of the hall. He watched the ancient species panic and argue. He watched them realize, too late, that the danger they had ignored was now consuming everything they had built. Part of him wanted to feel satisfied. They had laughed at him. They had dismissed his warnings. Now they were paying the price. But he felt no satisfaction, only sadness and anger and a cold, hard determination. Appeared beside him. "The fleet is ready," she whispered. "Admiral Minu has given the order. They will be here in 12 hours. Nodded. "Good, it is time." Over the next few days, the swarm attacked again and again. 12 colonies fell in the first week. Each one was consumed completely, leaving nothing behind. The great powers of the galaxy threw their warships against the darkness, but it was like throwing stones at a flood. The swarm absorbed every attack and kept coming. The empire, which had boasted of protecting the galaxy for 2 million years, lost half its fleet in a single battle. The proud warriors, so confident in their strength, were swept away like leaves in a storm. The ancient beings of pure energy, discovered that the swarm could consume energy as easily as matter. Entire populations vanished in flashes of light, their essence drained and absorbed into the endless hunger. Species that had never known fear learned what it meant to be prey. And then, when all hope seemed lost, something appeared on the edge of the battle zone. Human ships. Admiral Menu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth's Fury. Around him, 500 warships and 3,000 support vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. "All ships report," Menu ordered. His voice was calm, steady. He had waited his entire life for this moment. One by one, the captains responded. Every ship was ready. Every weapon was charged. Every crew member was at their station. On the bridge of the captain looked out at the swarm of darkness that filled the space ahead. It was larger than anything she had ever seen, larger than anything she had ever imagined. The creatures twisted and writhed, a living nightmare of metal and flesh. "Captain," her first officer said, "enemy count is impossible to calculate, at least 200 million individual organisms." Smiled, it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally found her prey. "Then we better get started," she said. The human fleet moved forward. Unlike the scattered attacks of the other species, they moved together in perfect formation. Their ships were designed to support each other, to cover each other's weaknesses, to strike as a single unified force. And their weapons were new. The scientists of Earth had studied the void swarm for 3 years. They had analyzed every piece of data, every recording, every fragment of destroyed probes. They had found something that no one else had noticed. The swarm was connected. Each creature was linked to the others through a network of energy signals. That network was how they coordinated their attacks, how they moved as one, how they overwhelmed their enemies with perfect timing. But that network was also their weakness. Admiral Menu gave the order. "All ships activate disruptors. Begin Phase 1. Across the fleet, a new type of weapon came online. It did not fire missiles or beams of energy. Instead, it sent out waves of interference, signals designed to disrupt the swarm's network. The effect was immediate. The swarm had been moving like a single organism, flowing toward the human fleet with terrible purpose. Now, suddenly, that flow became chaos. Creatures crashed into each other. Groups moved in different directions. The perfect coordination that had made them invincible was gone. "Phase 2, Menu ordered. Target the queens." The scientists had discovered something else. The swarm was not truly mindless. Deep within the mass of creatures, there were larger organisms, queens. They were the centers of the network, the minds that controlled everything. Kill the queens and the swarm would fall apart. Captain's ship led the assault. The plunged into the chaos of the disrupted swarm, its weapons firing in every direction. Creatures exploded around her, their bodies torn apart by specialized projectiles that targeted their internal systems. "Queen detected," her sensor officer reported. 200 kilometers ahead, surrounded by heavy protection. "Then we go through the protection," said. "All power to forward weapons, punch us a hole." The surged forward. Around it, other human ships followed, forming a wedge of steel and fire. They carved a path through the swarm, destroying everything in their way. And then they reached the queen. It was massive. A creature the size of a small moon, its body covered with sensors and weapons and armor. Around it, thousands of defenders swarmed, trying to protect their leader. "Did not hesitate. Fire everything," she ordered. The combined firepower of 20 human warships struck the queen. Explosions lit up the darkness. The creature screamed, a sound that echoed across every frequency. Its defenders went wild, attacking blindly in all directions. For a moment, it seemed like the queen might survive. Then Captain gave her final order. "Ramming speed." The accelerated, its crew knew what was coming. They did not flinch. They did not run. They held their positions and did their duty. The ship struck the Queen at full speed, its reinforced bow driving deep into the creature's body. At the moment of impact, the ship's reactor overloaded. A new sun was born in the darkness of space. When the light faded, the Queen was gone, destroyed, and with it a quarter of the entire swarm fell silent, their connection to the network severed forever. Across the battlefield, humans cheered, but Admiral Menu did not celebrate. "Find the next Queen," he ordered. "We have work to do." The battle raged for 3 days. Humans died, ships were destroyed, but for every human ship lost, 100,000 swarm creatures were killed. The specialized weapons, the disruption technology, the targeting of queens, it all worked. And slowly, impossibly, humanity began to win. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. These young humans, these children of the stars, were doing what the great powers of the galaxy could not. They were defeating the void swarm. "How?" whispered, his light flickering with shock. "How is this possible?" No one answered. No one knew what to say. But deep in the chaos of battle, Admiral Menu knew the answer. Humanity had prepared. When no one else would listen, when no one else would act, humans had done what they always did. They had faced their fear. They had worked hard. They had refused to accept defeat. And now they were saving the galaxy. Whether the galaxy deserved to be saved, that was a question for later. The battle had turned into a war. It spread across 100 star systems, a vast conflict that consumed everything in its path. But for the first time since the void swarm had appeared, the galaxy was not losing. It was winning. Admiral Menu stood in the command center of his new flagship. The Earth's fury had been badly damaged in the first battle, so he had transferred his flag to the unbroken spirit. The name was fitting, he thought. Humanity's spirit had never been broken, not even when they stood alone against the darkness. Around him, holographic displays showed the current state of the war. Blue dots represented human ships. Red dots represented the swarm. Green dots represented the fleets of other species who had finally joined the fight. There were a lot more blue and green dots than red ones now. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we have another request for assistance. The is under attack. Their remaining fleet is outnumbered 10-1. Menu studied the display. Those proud warriors who had laughed at humanity's warning, who had called them infants playing at being adults, now they were begging for help. Part of him wanted to ignore them. Let them face the consequences of their arrogance. Let them learn what it meant to be abandoned. But that was not who humans were. "Send the 7th and 9th fleets," Menu ordered. "Tell them to hold until we arrive." "Yes, Admiral." The war continued. Captain had not died in her attack on the first Queen. Against all odds, she had survived. When they had rammed the creature, the forward sections of the ship had been destroyed instantly, but had been in the rear command center, a reinforced bunker designed for exactly this situation. She and a handful of her crew had made it to escape pods just before the reactor overloaded. They had drifted in space for 6 hours before a rescue ship found them. Now commanded a new vessel, the Rising Dawn. She had been promoted to Commodore, given command of an entire battle group. She did not want the promotion. She wanted to be on the front lines, fighting alongside her people, but she understood why they needed her in command. She was a symbol now, the captain who had killed a queen, the woman who had led the charge that turned the tide. Her face was on recruitment posters across human space. Her name was spoken with respect even by the oldest species of the galaxy. She hated it, but she did her duty anyway. "Commodore," her tactical officer reported, "we have located another queen. It is hiding in the gas giant's upper atmosphere, using the interference to mask its signal." Studied the sensor data. The queen was clever. Most of them were. They had learned from the first battles, adapted to human tactics. They no longer clustered their queens together. They hid them, protected them, made them harder to find. But humans were clever too. Launch the penetrator probes, ordered. Map the atmosphere, find me an approach vector. Yes, Commodore. An hour later, the rising dawn led its battle group into the swirling clouds of the gas giant. The winds were fierce, the pressure crushing. No ship had ever survived such a dive, but human engineers had designed the ships for exactly this kind of operation. They found the Queen hiding in a pocket of calm air, surrounded by millions of defenders. It was larger than the first one had killed, more heavily armored, more dangerous. This one has been feeding well, her science officer observed grimly. It has consumed at least 3 inhabited worlds. Felt her jaw tighten. 3 worlds, billions of lives, all gone to feed this creature's endless hunger. Then it has lived too long, she said. All ships prepare for attack pattern Delta. We end this now. The battle was brutal. The Queen fought back with terrible fury, its weapons carving through human ships like knives through paper. Defenders swarmed in every direction, sacrificing themselves to protect their leader. But the humans did not retreat. They did not waver. They pushed forward through the storm of fire and death, their weapons blazing, their ships burning. In the end, it took the combined firepower of 37 warships to bring the Queen down. The creature's death scream echoed across every frequency, a sound of rage and pain that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. When it was over, looked at the casualty reports. 12 ships destroyed, 8,000 people dead. She closed her eyes and whispered their names under her breath. She did not know all of them. No one could, but she tried to remember as many as she could. That was what commanders did. They remembered the fallen. Meanwhile, the other species of the galaxy were finally contributing to the fight. The humbled by their losses had placed their remaining ships under human command. They had shared ancient knowledge of energy manipulation that helped improve human weapons. A dozen other species had sent fleets, scientists, resources, anything they could offer. The Galactic Council, which had dismissed humanity's warning, was now completely dependent on human leadership to survive. The council leader had requested a meeting with Admiral Minu. They met on a neutral station, far from the front lines. His energy form flickered weakly, his light dimmed by grief and shame. Admiral said, "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to express our gratitude. Without humanity's intervention, we would all be dead by now." Minu regarded the ancient being with cold eyes. "Yes," he said simply, "you would." Flinched at the bluntness. We also wish to apologize. We did not listen to your warning. We dismissed your concerns. We were arrogant and foolish." "You were," Minu agreed. He did not soften his words. He did not offer false comfort. They had led the galaxy for eons. They were supposed to be wise. They had failed. "I hope," hesitated, "I hope that in time you can forgive us." Minu was silent for a long moment. He thought about all the people who had died because the council had refused to listen. He thought about Colony 7, destroyed while the galaxy laughed at humanity's warning. He thought about his own people, who had sacrificed so much to save those who had abandoned them. "Forgiveness," he said finally, "is not something I can give. That decision belongs to the people of Earth. What I can tell you is this: humanity will finish this fight. We will destroy the Void Swarm, every last creature. Not because you asked us to, not because you deserve to be saved, but because that is who we are." He stood and walked toward the door. "When this war is over," he said without turning around, "we will have a conversation about the future of this galaxy. And that conversation will be very different from the ones you are used to having." He left alone in the empty room, his light flickering with fear. The final battle came 3 months later. Human scientists had traced the swarm back to its source, a massive structure hidden in the void between galaxies, a ship so large that it was almost a world unto itself. This was the heart of the swarm, the place where all the queens were born, where all the connections led. Destroy it and the swarm would die. Every human ship that could still fly gathered for the assault. The fleets of a dozen other species joined them. It was the largest military operation in the history of the galaxy. Admiral Menu stood on the bridge of the Unbroken Spirit, looking at the holographic display of the enemy structure. It was surrounded by the largest concentration of swarm creatures anyone had ever seen. Billions of them, maybe trillions. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "our analysis suggests that we will lose at least 60% of our forces in this assault, possibly more." Menu nodded. He had known this. They all had. "Then we make that sacrifice count," he said. "All ships prepare for final approach." Across the fleet, humans and aliens alike themselves for the battle that would decide the fate of everything. Some prayed to gods they had almost forgotten. Some called loved ones to say goodbye. Some simply sat in silence, making peace with what was to come. On the bridge of the rising dawn, Commodore looked at her crew. They were tired, they were scared, but they were ready. "You all know what we are facing," she said. "Some of us will not survive this day, but those who fall will fall as heroes, and those who survive will tell our story to the generations that follow. They will know that when the darkness came, we did not run. We did not hide. We stood together and we fought." She paused, letting her words sink in. "For Earth," she said. "For humanity. For everyone who ever looked at the stars and dreamed of something greater." Her crew responded as one, "For Earth." The final battle began. The battle lasted for 18 hours. 18 hours of fire and death and destruction. 18 hours of screaming engines and exploding ships and the endless howl of the void swarm. 18 hours that would be remembered for as long as civilization existed. The human fleet carved a path through the swarm like a blade through flesh. Ships died by the hundreds, their crews fighting until the very last moment, their weapons blazing even as their hulls broke apart. Behind them came the Allied fleets, following the trail of destruction that humanity left in its wake. Admiral Menu watched it all from the bridge of the Unbroken Spirit. His face was calm, his voice steady as he issued orders. But inside, his heart was breaking. Every blue dot that vanished from his display was a ship. Every ship was a crew. Every crew was made of people who had trusted him to lead them. He would mourn them later. Now he had a job to finish. "Status report," he ordered. "We have breached the outer defense ring," his tactical officer replied. "Enemy losses are catastrophic. Our losses are significant. 42% of the human fleet destroyed. Allied forces have taken similar casualties." 42%. Menu closed his eyes for just a moment. So many good people, so many lives cut short. Distance to primary target. 300,000 kilometers and closing. The primary target, the heart of the swarm. It filled the forward now, a twisted mass of metal and flesh larger than any moon. From its surface, countless creatures were still pouring forth, a river of darkness that seemed to have no end. But the river was slowing. The humans had destroyed so many queens, disrupted so many network connections, that the swarm was fighting at a fraction of its normal efficiency. Creatures crashed into each other, attacked their own allies, flew in random directions with no coordination. The endless hunger that had consumed worlds was now just hunger without purpose. "Admiral," the communications officer said, "Commodore reports that the Rising Dawn has reached optimal firing position. She is requesting permission to deploy the final weapon." The final weapon. Project. It had taken every scientist on Earth 3 years to develop it. A bomb that would turn the heart of the swarm into a miniature star for just a few seconds. Long enough to burn away every piece of organic matter within 1,000,000 kilometers. Long enough to end the war. "Tell Commodore to proceed," Menu said. Far across the battlefield, the rising dawn emerged from a cloud of debris. The ship was badly damaged, its hull with dozens of wounds, its engines struggling to maintain power. But it was still flying. It was still fighting. On the bridge, watched as the final weapon was prepared for launch. It was surprisingly small, this device that would end a cosmic threat. Just a cylinder about 2 meters long, glowing with barely contained energy. "Weapon is armed," her weapons officer reported. "Target is locked, awaiting your order, Commodore." Looked at the massive structure on her. She thought about all the worlds it had consumed, all the lives it had taken, all the suffering it had caused. "Fire," she said. The weapon launched. It crossed the distance between the rising dawn and the heart of the swarm in less than a second. The moment it struck, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then came the light. It was brighter than any star, brighter than anything had ever seen. She had to look away, and even then the afterimage burned in her eyes. The light spread outward in a perfect sphere, consuming everything it touched. When it faded, the heart of the swarm was gone. In its place was only an expanding cloud of superheated gas, glowing with the remnants of the artificial sun that had burned for just 3 seconds. And then something incredible happened. Across the entire battlefield, the remaining swarm creatures stopped moving. They hung in space like puppets whose strings had been cut. The light in their eyes, that terrible hungry glow, flickered and died. One by one they began to drift apart. Their bodies went limp. Their weapons fell silent. The void swarm was dead. For a long moment no one spoke. No one moved. The survivors of the battle simply stared at their screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. Then a voice came over the communications channel. It was. "All ships," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "Target destroyed, the swarm is neutralized, we did it." The fleet erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens alike celebrated, their voices mixing together in a chorus of joy and relief. After so much death, so much destruction, so much sacrifice, they had won. Admiral Menu sat back in his chair and let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 3 years. His eyes burned with tears he would not let fall. "Well done," he whispered. "Well done, all of you." 1 month later, Ambassador stood once again before the Galactic Council. The Great Hall was different now. Many of the seats were empty, their occupants having died in the war. The survivors looked diminished, their arrogance stripped away by the horror they had witnessed. Even the council leader seemed smaller somehow, his light dim and uncertain. Stood on the central platform just as he had 3 years ago when he had tried to warn them. Behind him stood Admiral Menu, Commodore, and a dozen other human leaders. Their uniforms were crisp, their medals gleaming, their faces hard. "Members of the Galactic Council," began. His voice was calm, steady. "3 years ago I stood in this hall and warned you of the void swarm. I showed you evidence. I begged you to act. You laughed at me. You dismissed my concerns. You called humanity children and told us we did not understand." He paused, letting his words echo through the silent hall. "You were wrong." No one spoke, no one could speak. "The void swarm has been destroyed," continued. "Not by the great powers of this galaxy, not by your ancient wisdom or your vast fleets. It was destroyed by humans, by the species you looked down upon, by the children you thought you could ignore." He took a step forward, and his voice grew harder. "We lost 200,000 people in this war. Ships, colonies, families. They died because you would not listen. They died to save a galaxy that had abandoned them. And now you sit in your broken hall and wait for us to tell you what happens next." Turned and looked at his people, at Menu, whose face was carved from stone, at whose eyes burned with quiet fire, at all the humans who had fought and bled and died for a galaxy that did not deserve them. Then he turned back to the council. "Here is what happens next," he said. "Humanity will not seek revenge. We will not punish you for your mistakes. That is not who we are. But things will change. The old order where ancient species ruled and younger ones obeyed is over. From now on, every voice in this galaxy will be heard. Every warning will be taken seriously. Every species, no matter how young, will be treated with respect. He looked directly at, and if you ever dismiss a warning again, said, his voice dropping to something almost like a whisper, remember this day. Remember what your arrogance cost. Remember the humans who saved you when you did not deserve to be saved. He turned and walked toward the exit. The other humans followed, but at the door he stopped one final time. We warned you, he said. You did not listen. Now the war is over and you are standing in ruins while humanity stands tall. Remember that. Remember it forever. Then he walked out, and the great doors closed behind him. In the hall, the survivors of the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. They had ruled the galaxy for eons. They had thought themselves wise and powerful and eternal. Now they knew the truth. The galaxy had changed. A new species had risen, and nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, walked through the corridor toward the human shuttle, fell into step beside him, just as she had all those years ago. Do you think they understood? She asked. Thought about the question. He thought about all the meetings, all the dismissals, all the laughter. He thought about the war and the sacrifices and the victory that had cost so much. I think they will learn, he said finally. They have no choice now. Nodded, they walked in silence for a moment. What happens next? She asked. Looked up at the stars visible through the corridor window. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. We rebuild, he said. We grow, we explore. We do what humans have always done. He smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, there was warmth in it. We reach for something greater. Together they walked toward the shuttle that would take them home. Behind them, the old galaxy crumbled. Ahead of them, a new future waited. And humanity would face it standing tall.